Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you're part of our journey. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and get ready for a story that will leave you thinking. And if you love inspiring tales, a like goes a long way. We don't treat charity cases. Those 5 words hung in the air as the little girl's wheeze grew louder. The mother's pleading eyes darted around the waiting room, searching for humanity in a place meant for healing. Behind her, a man in a baseball cap lowered his magazine. The small Mexican clinic's fluorescent lights flickered, casting shadows across peeling wallpaper and worn furniture. Outside, the evening painted the sky purple, but inside, time had stopped. The secretary's manicured nails tapped impatiently on the counter while the mother clutched both her daughter and an empty wallet. The girl's lips were turning blue now. "Please," the mother whispered, her voice breaking. "I'll find the money, I promise." The doctor shook his head, clipboard a shield against her desperation. In the corner, the man in the cap stood up, sunglasses coming off. Nobody recognized him yet, but everyone would remember this moment. If this moment made you feel something, imagine what's coming next. Hit that like button and stay with us. Subscribe now. Maria Delgado had spent her last pesos on the taxi here, after the public hospital turned them away. Too crowded, they said. Her daughter Lucia's asthma attack had worsened over the last hour. The private clinic was their final hope, with its polished floors and framed credentials that promised care. If you could pay. The receptionist's words still echoed. 8,000 pesos up front. An impossible sum for a single mother working double shifts at the hotel laundry. "The policy is clear," the doctor said, not meeting her eyes. He was young, probably still paying off medical school. Administration requires payment before treatment. His white coat seemed too crisp, too clean against the suffering before him. Lucia's small chest heaved with each labored breath. Her stuffed rabbit clutched weakly against her Wonder Woman t-shirt. The waiting room had fallen silent. An elderly couple clutched each other's hands. A businessman pretended to scroll through his phone, but his thumb had stopped moving. A pregnant woman pressed her palm against her belly, as if shielding her unborn child from the reality before them. Nobody spoke. Nobody helped. They were all thinking the same shameful thought. Better her child than mine. "Please," Maria whispered again, dignity abandoned. "She can't breathe." Lucia's wheezing punctuated her mother's words with terrifying rhythm. The receptionist glanced at her painted nails, then at the clock. The security guard shifted uncomfortably. The doctor flipped through his papers, muttering about protocols and regulations. The bureaucracy of death was efficiently underway. Forms more important than the fading heartbeat of an 8-year-old whose crime was being born poor. The man in the corner had been sitting there for 20 minutes. He'd come to meet a friend who worked at the clinic, never expecting to witness a child's life hanging in the balance over money. Under his baseball cap, his eyes tracked every detail. The mother's trembling hands, the doctor's averted gaze, the girl's blue-tinged fingernails. Robert Downey Jr. had played heroes in movies for years, had worn Iron Man's suit and pretended to save the world. But there were no cameras here, no script, no special effects team to make everything right before the credits rolled. He'd been in Mexico privately, avoiding the spotlight that followed him everywhere. The cap and glasses were his shield against recognition. Now, as he watched life and death unfold in this dingy waiting room, he realized with sudden clarity that anonymity wasn't just a luxury. It was a choice that was about to end. Things are about to take a turn. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe, like our video, and keep watching. Robert stood, removing his cap in one fluid motion. His heart pounded against his ribs, not from fear of recognition, but from the weight of what was happening. He'd battled his own demons for years, had known rock bottom, had been given second chances when he didn't deserve them. How could he sit by and watch as a child was denied her first chance? "What's the bill?" His voice cut through the tense silence. Heads turned, eyes widened. The receptionist's mouth formed a small O of recognition. The doctor froze, clipboard suspended midair. Maria, still cradling her wheezing daughter, didn't look up, couldn't look up. Her world narrowed to the struggle of her child's breathing. 8,000 pesos for initial treatment, the doctor stammered, professionalism fracturing under the sudden celebrity presence. Plus, whatever medications and— "I'll cover it," Robert said, already reaching for his wallet. "And whatever else she needs." He moved toward the counter, but his eyes never left Lucia's face. The girl's gaze, clouded with fear and pain, suddenly locked onto his. Recognition flickered there. Not of the celebrity, but of something deeper. Hope. The energy in the room transformed. Whispers rippled through the waiting area. "As Iron Man," Alguien susurró. Phones appeared, but not yet raised, the gravity of the situation keeping celebrity excitement at bay. The receptionist's demeanor shifted instantly, professional smile clicking into place. "Of course, Mr. Downey. We'll prepare a treatment room immediately." "That won't be necessary," the doctor interjected, suddenly authoritative. "Protocol requires paperwork before—" "She can't breathe," Robert said, voice level but eyes burning. "The paperwork can wait." He turned to Maria, whose confusion was giving way to dawning recognition. "Ma'am, they're going to help your daughter now." It wasn't a question. The doctor hesitated, caught between policy and the unwavering stare of a man whose face had adorned billboards around the world. But it wasn't the celebrity power that made him finally nod. It was the humanity in Robert's eyes, the silent challenge that asked, "What kind of doctor are you? What kind of person?" "Bring her to room 3, the doctor finally said. The words unlocked a flurry of motion. A nurse appeared with a wheelchair. Maria lifted Lucia, whispering reassurances in Spanish. As they rushed past, Robert caught the mother's eye, saw the mixture of gratitude and humiliation there. He recognized that look. He'd worn it himself in darker times when help came at the cost of dignity. "Lo siento," he said quietly. "I'm sorry, not for helping, but for a world where she had to beg for her child's life." Maria nodded once, tears streaming freely now that action had replaced desperation. The waiting room erupted once they disappeared through the swinging doors. Phones raised, voices excited. Robert ignored them, turning instead to the receptionist whose smile faltered under his gaze. "The bill," he said firmly, "and not just for her. For anyone else who's been turned away today." The woman blinked, confused. "Check your records," he continued. "Anyone who couldn't afford treatment, I want their information. All of them. This story is only getting deeper. What would you do in this situation? Comment below, and let's talk." The clinic administrator arrived 15 minutes later, summoned by frantic texts. A small balding man with expensive cufflinks and practiced charm. "Mr. Downey, what an honor," he gushed, extending his hand. "Had I known you were visiting our humble facility—" "How many?" Robert interrupted, ignoring the outstretched hand. The administrator's smile flickered. "I'm sorry? How many people have you turned away? Today, this week, this year?" Each question landed like a stone. The waiting room had gone silent again, every ear straining to hear. Social media was already exploding outside these walls, but inside, something more important was happening. "We're a private facility," the administrator began, voice cooling. "We have operating costs, staff to pay." "I understand business," Robert cut in. "I'm in one that makes billions pretending to save people. The difference is, nobody dies when my business turns them away." He pulled out his phone. "My business manager's on standby. Name your price for treating everyone you've rejected." The administrator's facade cracked. "This is highly irregular. We can't just—" "Can't?" Robert's voice rose, filling the small space. "Can't help dying children. Can't prioritize human life over policy." Every word pulled from his own history, his own redemption story. "I've heard can't before. I've been the can't. Too addicted, too unreliable, too far gone. Until someone decided I was worth the risk." The administrator shifted uncomfortably. Phone cameras captured every second. Robert didn't care anymore. This wasn't about publicity, good or bad. This was about a little girl in a Wonder Woman shirt who couldn't breathe. "Here's what's going to happen," Robert continued, voice steady now. "You're going to treat that child like she's the most important patient you've ever had. Then, you're going to give me records of everyone you've turned away in the past year. My foundation will cover their costs. And then—" He paused, looking directly at the doctor who'd initially refused treatment. "You're going to change your policies." The swinging doors opened. Maria emerged, her face wet with tears, but her eyes alight with relief. "She's breathing better," she said to no one and everyone. "They gave her medicine and—" Her voice caught when she saw Robert still standing there, realizing fully now who had intervened. "Gracias," she whispered, the word carrying the weight of her world. Robert crossed to her, speaking quietly. "My friend works here. He'll make sure Lucia gets everything she needs." He pressed a card into her hand. "And this is my assistant's number. Call tomorrow. I want to help with her follow-up care." Maria stared at the card, then at him. Why? The question wasn't accusatory, it was genuine wonder. Robert smiled, the kind that never made it to movie posters. Too real. Too raw. "Because I've been on both sides of that counter," he said. "The person nobody would help, and the person with power to change things." He glanced around at the phones recording, at the administrative staff huddled in worried consultation, at the ordinary people watching extraordinary kindness unfold. "None of this is acting," he added softly. "It's not over yet. The best part is coming. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it." By morning, the video had gone viral. Robert Downey Jr., without the Iron Man suit, fighting a battle more real than any Marvel movie. The clinic's phones rang constantly. Reporters gathered outside. Inside, something had shifted. Emergency cases were being accepted regardless of payment status, with staff citing a new directive. Lucia was discharged that afternoon, her breathing normalized, clutching an Iron Man plush that someone had rushed to the gift shop to find. Maria held her daughter's hand with one hand and the business card with the other, a lifeline she still couldn't believe was real. The clinic administrator, seeing which way the winds of public opinion were blowing, announced a new program for low-income patients. He named it after Lucia, calling it Divine Inspiration, never mentioning the celebrity ultimatum that had forced his hand. The doctor who had initially refused treatment requested a transfer to the pediatric ward, something awakened in him that had been buried under years of administrative pressure. 2 days later, Robert's Foundation announced a major initiative to support healthcare access across rural Mexico. Donations flooded in from fans, celebrities, and corporations eager to associate with the viral moment of genuine humanity. Interviews were requested, but declined. This wasn't about publicity tours or image rehabilitation. It was about action. In comment sections and social media debates, the story sparked conversations about healthcare, privilege and responsibility. Some praised Robert's intervention, others questioned why it took a celebrity to change policy. The discourse was messy, complex, exactly as it should be. Real change wasn't neat, like movie endings. Maria received the call as promised. Lucia's treatment would be covered, along with an education fund established in her name. When asked by a persistent reporter how it felt to be helped by Iron Man, Maria shook her head. "No fu Iron Man," she said firmly. "Fue Robert. Una persona real." It wasn't Iron Man. It was Robert. A real person. A month later, when the media frenzy had subsided, Robert returned to the clinic without disguise. He toured the new Lucia Emergency Care Program facilities, speaking with patients and staff. The receptionist who had denied treatment was gone. Resigned or reassigned, no one would say. In her place sat a young woman whose brother had once been turned away with a broken arm. Second chances came in many forms. After the tour, Robert visited Lucia at her home. No cameras, no press release. They colored superhero pictures at the kitchen table, while Maria prepared a modest meal she insisted on sharing. Lucia showed him her inhaler, explaining in careful English how it helped her breathe. "You're the real superhero," Robert told her, meaning every word. As he left that modest home, a neighborhood child recognized him and shouted excitedly. Adults gathered, phones appeared. But before the celebrity moment could take over, Robert pointed back at Lucia's door. "The real story is in there," he said. "And in every place where people choose kindness over policy, humanity over procedure." Then he smiled, the real smile, not the red carpet one, and walked away. Wow, what a story! If this moved you, imagine what else we have for you. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and let us know what you think.